So in this video, I'll be talking about the Save the Children, Convoy, Nonvoy, whatever it is that they're presently calling it. And I'll be talking about these figurehead leaders, if you will, and some issues that either surround this group or that have nothing to do with them entirely. But the point I'm getting at is when you look at National Socialism, fascism, communism, the indoctrination of children in schools having to do with ideology and genders, and Israel, Palestine, and probably several other issues I've not even mentioned, is that it all creates a very tense ground for people where when people are just very tense, very angry, scared, whatever the case may be, a certain emotion of an extreme, if you will, they're very easily manipulated. And the other aspect I want to get at too is that every narrative needs a counter narrative, but taking it a step further, every counter narrative needs a counter narrative. I've sort of explained this in different ways in different videos, but when I say this, look at the freedom movement, if you will, right? They started off by opposing the coercive medical measures, if you will, and still do. And sorry again for the awkward choice of words. These are the things you have to do to keep a video on YouTube. So, with these coercive measures, if you will, in place, the counter-narrative established is the freedom movement. And I've called out some of the various organizations. And the other thing I want to say too is when I say every counter-narrative also needs its counter-narrative, this basically goes into the fact that you have, within the context of the freedom movement, let's say, you have people that advocate for political and legal solutions, and then you have other groups that are not really in that ballpark whatsoever, where they try to get you away from the system in some way, shape, or form, or speak about it as if it's not built for you. And while more of my research tends to actually lead in some of those aspects being correct, the thing is a lot of those people also tend to weaponize the truth in such a way. And I'll give you an example of how something could be weaponized so Canada is a corporation that's registered in Washington, D.C. through the U.S. Treasuries and Trades Commission, right? So if I tell people that voting in the Corporation of Canada feeds the war machine and anybody who votes is your enemy, that was true up until saying that anybody who votes is your enemy, right? And so some of these brutal truths, if you will, are weaponized to an extent in order to manipulate people. And manipulation happens in various forms, different avenues, different methods. Some people are more smooth than others. But anyway, I just want to give some background a little bit later in the video having to do with why I'm making this video, and as well, I'm going to be talking about some of these people here. So first I'm going to name them left to right. The two French people are Matthew Venn and Norman Blanchfield over here. And then you have Gordon James Berry Jr., who we'll be speaking about as well. Ron Clark, Freedom George as he's known, but his real name is Tyson Billings. And then you have Dr. Chris Shoemaker and Colin Big Bear Ross, who I have already made a video about with ties to the UN and such. You can check out that video. And I'll be reviewing some of those facts as well a little bit in this video. So I just want to give some background here with Gordon and I. So he had initially contacted me it was about August or September of 2022 roughly. And that was when I had made video having to do with Marcus Ray. I have two videos as well, by the way, but after I had made the first one is when Gordon had contacted me and he disputed some of the information that I had put in my video, and some of those things that he was correct about were, I would say, trivial if you look at it, and then there were certain things he did not have a leg to stand on. So what do I mean exactly? Well, when it comes down to what he addressed that he was correct about, it was things like event times and dates and or different terms being used and stuff at the time. Those were things that I was out of date with at the time, and now even watching that, that would be out of date in its entirety. So the thing that he didn't really have a leg to stand on about was when I had asked him about Marcus Ray's wife, who is also his business partner. She owns a hair salon called Man Up Grooming, and Man Up Grooming supported those coercive medical measures. So that's kind of strange. And the fact that Allison Koch owns it, and that surname Koch as well, I'm sure people are familiar with. So, and then I had snapped a photo of her, or rather, excuse me, I had found a photo of her on Facebook that had her at Terminal City Club, which is a very exclusive club that like very rich figures, corporate oligarchs, and like the Bronfman family and stuff like that would attend, right? So it was definitely somewhat strange to see somebody in a position like that, especially considering like some of the main guests at Terminal City Club are people that have what's called Zajac Knights, and I'm probably mispronouncing that, but Zajac is a Polish surname. So Zajac. But anyway, they're a wealthy Polish family in Canada, and so they have a lot to do with Terminal City Club. And Alison Koch also used to work for what's called the Cactus Club, which is kind of like an expensive cafe in British Columbia. And one of the board members of Zajac Knights actually works for the Cactus Club. So I just think that that's a little interesting parallel there. Now, the other thing too that I mainly wanted to mention was this constitutional sheriffs thing. Now that was also something that Gordon and I had spoke about when he had first reached out to me time ago between August and September of 2022. And he told me that it was dated or not being used at the time or something of that matter. And so we can see when we look at this photo, sorry about the zooming, we can see this says Constitutional Sheriffs and Ambassador of Canada. So I'm not sure why he was wearing this shirt, but it was in one of his live streams on Facebook. And I'm curious as to why he would be doing that now, and if that was dated at the time, like why is that even being done? And also the other thing that I noticed too about this image here is that Louise Ray, or Dallas Hills if you will, ended up sharing this video, and it's my understanding that Dallas Hills and Marcus Ray were working together, as when you go refer to my Dallas Hills video, you'll see that he was uploading a lot of my content onto his Rumble page, which is fine, but he avoided uploading the Marcus Ray videos, which I thought was a little bit strange. And so one of the things that I actually wanted to ask Gordon about was this constitutional sheriff's shirt, and there are other things as well. I had asked him to do a live stream basically, or a time that he could take some questions of mine, and I understand that looking at this particular picture, you can see, and actually there is a more clear photo of two different addresses that I could theoretically go to and voice my concerns, but the thing is I have so many of them that I wouldn't want to take up that kind of time on a stage speaking like that. And also, when I go to somebody else's venue, I'm in their playing field, so to speak, right? Whereas making a video like this, I'm on a neutral platform where nobody can essentially silence me, and as well, I could speak as long as I bloody well please, right? So, some of the things, like, when I had asked him, basically, he said that he'll talk to the team and get back to me, saying, no problem, thanks for getting back to me. And then about 5 days after or so, I asked him if he and his team got back to if they've got back to each other yet. He says, not yet. We've been dealing with many issues and addressing all the attempts at infiltration. Also, to be completely honest, I don't know where your loyalties are. Still with those that have spread massive lies about me and such. The people I trust and know is very few, bro. I mean no offense by that. Okay, well, I understand what you're saying about attempts at infiltration if I'm looking at things from a perspective, assuming some of the things that we'll be talking about are not psyops, but I will definitely be covering some of the things that don't add up. And again, these are things I wanted to talk to you about, so these things could have easily been solved by just simply talking to me. You did not have to agree to a live stream. So, with anything too, you weren't able to tell me who these people are that are spreading massive lies about you, so to speak. And as well, I thought you would have consulted your team basically within a course of 5 days of having reached out to you, right? And he says, I'm not speaking about you spreading lies. I am also trying to tell you that this is constant, dealing with various shit from every angle all the time, trying 48 hours worth of work in 24-hour days. Like, also, too, all I'm going to say is, with due respect, man, I get you're saying you're overworked, but it really wasn't hard to just simply forward my message, my voice clip that I sent you, to your entire team. Yeah, it really wasn't that hard, and that takes like all of 5 seconds, so I don't really know where you stand here. And so I just kind of feel like you're honestly deflecting, if I'm real with you, and trying to get out of even doing some kind of live stream or even any of the questions. So here's some of the things too I want to say about you that don't really add up. Like, for one thing, you created this Facebook page, Shifting to Consciousness Great Awakening. I'm going to be talking about some of those terms too, by the way. But the thing that I've noticed is a lot of the dialogue, rhetoric, and stuff that you speak, Gordon, has to do with QAnon Masonic type of garbage and New Age Helena Blavatsky and Alice Bailey type of stuff. And I'll be covering some of those things. So first I want to say, like, you mentioned Baal worshippers, dark spirits, and what they do with the kids, so to speak, which is, again, like, it's not to say people are not trafficked, and it's not to say children are not in danger. Like, look at our bloody schools, for instance. But, and also, family children's services, that kind of a thing. But when you honestly almost, it just makes it sound like you're talking about Q, and the way I'm saying is you talk about the Great Awakening, and it's compared to the Great Reset. And you yourself have even said in different live streams, like, we're doing our own Great Reset. So you know that the Great Awakening is simply a mirror of the Great Reset. And how is that the case? Well, we see Jasara inside the quantum financial system. That could also apply to Nasara. So Jasara is supposedly a returning to like gold-backed assets and a debt jubilee, if you will. I think the debt jubilee has to do with the debt that is owed to us, not it basically has to do with not something that is good for us. So the debt jubilee doesn't have to do with relinquishing any debt that they actually owe to us through thefts with our birth certificate and that kind of a thing, which is just on the US stock exchange. It has to do with any debt that is essentially that we would apparently have would be increased tenfold. And how would that be done? Well, with this sort of return to gold or silver-backed assets that is spoken about, what's actually done is they're using what are called NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens. And so the thing is, this quantum financial system that Jasara followers and like people that support Q and the Great Awakening talk about, this quantum financial system, right? And it actually uses blockchain technology, right? And so the thing is, the NFTs that I was getting at is that non-fungible tokens are simply like images, basically, or files that are not real pieces of, say, gold or silver. They're just simply pictures of gold or silver bars. And so what I'm saying is this sort of social credit system that you supposedly also are combating or don't want to have anything to do with, right? Digital ID and that kind of a thing. That all runs on the blockchain as well, just like this quantum financial system. So literally the Great Awakening and the Great Reset are literally one and the same. Like, take the whole from darkness to light phrase, right, that few people say. You also see that it has to do with Freemasonry. And how does that actually work? Well, looking at this here, I just want to say, like, Manly P. Hall, 33rd degree Freemason, by the way, basically says that the light and the darkness are one and the same. And what does he mean? Well, basically, throughout rituals and initiations, people are taken with blindfold, right? And brought throughout, generally speaking, with a noose, or what Masons refer to as a cable, because they seem to have a word for everything, and taken around the lodge, so to speak, and at the end, generally, of a ritual, the blindfold is taken off, so from darkness to light, so to speak, right? And so it's all about seeking more light and that kind of a thing, right? And so now, like, moving in the direction, like, of Alice Bailey, for instance, who says, let light and love and power and death fulfill the purpose of the coming one. Well, basically, what I'm getting at is that with Helena Blavatsky, like, a lot of her philosophy and stuff revolves around some of the things that you've actually been preaching, such as high vibrational energy and that kind of a thing, being able to negate that of low vibrational energy, even though you guys are apparently being infiltrated left, right, and center. So I'm told anyway. The reality of the situation is that when it comes down to good and evil, evil needs actually one prime thing for it to flourish, and that's simply good people. Because without good people, it wouldn't be able to work in its evil wouldn't be able to work in its deceptive ways, so to speak, right? So, and they also need us in order to help them usher in a change. And so, while the system wasn't built for us, and then you also have people advocating for the system, the thing is, these people in high places very much want the system to crash and burn, for the simple fact is that they could issue in a more tyrannical one. And that's exactly what happens at the end of every revolution. Like, look at Greece or France, for example, right? So Alice Bailey, in her dialogue with the, high vibrational energy, low vibrational energy and such, she is somebody who brought forward what's called the Lucis Trust, if you will, and she's known as the mother of the New Age movement. And she was part of the Theosophical movement, if you will, or rather incorporated. New Age is basically a part of Theosophy, and then Helena Blavatsky is who started the Theosophical Society, right? And the Rosicrucians are Theosophists as well, by definition. So, and we could talk in another video sometime having to do with the formation of Freemasonry and what it is today, but I don't want to go too far off the mark. I just want to focus here on the New Age. So, with some of her ideas, right, I mean, some people talk about this Galactic Federation thing. She spoke about what are called Ascended Masters, if you will, which is kind of like, if you will, sort of takes the aspect of what some people refer to as Ascension, and then the Galactic Federation, where some people believe, well, it's aliens that'll come down and save them. Sometimes people believe it's a sort of, high vibrational energy, for lack of better words, where people will hit this sort of critical mass or something, and will just be in this kind of evolved state where nothing can touch them, I guess. And so, with that, you kind of have the Ascended Masters. And the thing about, now I'm going to talk about religion a bit. This is a 10-point plan to destroy Christianity, but what I'm getting at is the one thing that atheists and religious people can actually agree on are aliens, apparently. So, here are some of the endorsements here of the 10-point charter by Alice Bailey that has to do with destroying Christianity. And while I just want to say some of the Abrahamic religion philosophy have a lot of fear basis to it, in my view, such as threats of punishment to like go to hell, or threats of punishment in some way, shape, or form if there is some kind of wrongdoing. The thing is, with the New Age, it's kind of the exact opposite, where instead of fear-based 1984 type of stuff, it's lulling and dulling Brave New World Aldous Huxley type of stuff. So here are the 10 tenets here, or 10-point charter. 1. Take God and prayer out of the education system. 2. Reduce parental authority over the children. Well, we can see that today in the schools. Destroy the Judeo-Christian family structure, or the traditional Christian family structure. If this is free, then make abortion legal and make it easy. Make divorce easy and legal. Free people from the concept of marriage for life. Make homosexuality an alternative lifestyle. Debase art, make it run mad. Use media to promote and change mindsets. Create an interfaith movement. That one is the key one here. Get governments to make all these law and get the church to endorse these changes. Wow. Okay. So that is just insane, must say. So the last thing I just kind of want to put into perspective here, I know I sort of briefly went over it, but just once again, just to make it simplistic here, the Great Awakening you can kind of think of as light, and the Great Reset you can kind of think of as darkness, where both have the financial crash in place, and also both usher in a more tyrannical system. The thing is with the Great Reset, digital currency or CBDCs and digital ID, and as well Bitcoin, are all ran through the blockchain. And then with Nisara, Jisara, whatever you want to call it, basically, this debt jubilee or whatever, which is linked to the quantum financial system, has to do with, they say, back to digital assets, if you will, but those are nothing more than just literally files that show a certain element attached to it, but there isn't a physical piece of gold attached to it. Just please bear this in mind. You also have the ideology of white hats and stuff like that, which is, a Masonic term as well. But with this kind of aspect, you see it attached to the quantum financial system. This all has to do with global currency reset. There is no real gold standard, though. It all has to do with this blockchain social credit system BS. I'll go over who that is eventually. So now I just want to say, the whole thing about controlled opposition here is that, I hear Gordon mention controlled opposition quite often in his videos, but he very infrequently seems to drop names, and he says that the groups that don't work together, they band together when it suits them because it's about egos at one point. Now, let me actually just clarify here. It's not about egos, it's about theater, okay? It distracts and divides people. While sometimes true information is brought out of these things, there are slivers of truth to make something convincing at times, and sometimes things are true, but it's for one purpose and one purpose only, and people need to be transferring an agenda to play out, as I was saying, and for people to be manipulated. This is the Ordo ab Chao agenda, or the order out of chaos agenda, if you will. And so sometimes truths are weaponized, or sometimes there's purely deceit in the air, but it's just simply about making people tense. It's not about, actually bringing truth to any sort of situation, right? So the person I want to bring up here is Joseph Nixon, otherwise known as Little Wolverine. We'll be speaking about him a little bit, but what I was getting at is there was a day in Mississauga, I think, where I had actually met this Little Wolverine, or Joseph Nixon, in person, and I also met Gordon James Barry, in person. And so I went to a meeting where there were no phones, and basically there were probably different shills in the room, but the two that I could definitely point out for sure were Kellyanne Wolf and Jody Ledgerwood, who attended this meeting. And basically what happened was Kelly interrupted Joseph as he was speaking, and there was a shouting match back and forth. And Kelly had brought up some degree of legitimate points, some having to do with Marcus Ray, for instance, which was legitimate, but brought up about 12 other things roughly very fast and wouldn't stop talking. And the thing is, when you actually address points, you go one by one and have a discussion with somebody. You don't throw 20 different things at somebody and then keep going. So it seemed like her intention was specifically to create a sort of division or animosity and just make people tense, if you will, or stifle progress is the way it appeared to look at face value. I'll tell you what I think as I go forward, but to me, like, the whole thing seemed staged to me, and the reason why it seemed staged is because that outburst, if you will, seemed to happen after, quote unquote, the plan was revealed. And what do I mean by the plan? I will be going over this plan in the video here. So I want to verify it in a couple of different ways. So first off, I would like to show that it is in this article somewhere. Just bear with me. And while I really don't endorse press progress, as they seem to feed the narrative of, apparently the Convoy people being anti-LGB whatever is, nonsense. Like, I don't agree with the indoctrination and that people should have to actually even memorize that acronym, as I don't memorize it. But they don't discriminate on somebody because of one's sexual orientation or preferences and that kind of a thing. So as far as I'm concerned, this article is mostly comprised of slander as far as I'm concerned, but it's only one sliver of the narrative, if you will, right? So what was verified at this meeting right before Kellyanne Wolf's outburst, basically, and you see Jody Ledgerwood is speaking about it here in this article, but phase one of the plan involves sending a convoy to occupy Toronto's financial district, and when Toronto police mobilized public order units to end the convoy occupation, a second convoy would surprise police and box them in, forcing police to surrender, okay? And then phase two involves surrounding 8 federal buildings in Ottawa and detaining MPs, holding the elected officials in custody until they gave into the convoy leaders' demands. So some some examples of some of those buildings, which this is all leaked now anyway, and they clearly don't care, just like Vets for Freedom's plan. Just like Vets for Freedom apparently leaked a plan, if you will. I'm going to go over that one too a little bit, but they don't care about a plan being leaked because this plan that I'm showing you, it's either not going to happen this way at all. This is some kind of total diversion for people getting involved, or it is simply the truth and they don't care. Like, the possibilities are endless, but the point is that this plan, if you will, was spoken about. So phase two, these 8 buildings that were to be surrounded, some of them included Privy Council, Senate, the Archive Library, Department of Defense, Justin Trudeau's residence, CBC building, Bank of Canada, and Parliament building. So yeah, definitely kind of nutty, to say the least, and definitely, how do I put it? You can't really call it peaceful if you're also talking about arresting people as well. And again, any sort of revolt is exactly what these people want, and I don't advocate for sitting on your couch and doing nothing either, but I'm just talking to you about an enemy that creates the problem and the solution to begin with, not just an enemy who creates a problem. So this is a little bit beyond the average person's scope of thinking, and no one person can really fathom their way around this entire agenda, this New World Order, if you will, or Agenda 2030, or any of these things, right? But a lot of these large events do need to happen in order for these people to achieve what it is they want, like control of tillage, livestock, farms, and that kind of a thing, right, through Agenda 2030 or Vision 2050 or any of these variables here. So while Phase 2 was unfolding, another group would simultaneously execute Phase 3 by sending a final convoy to confront the Freemasons in the oceanside village of Tofino, British Columbia, where they would take the head off the snake, so to speak. And so, you know, and they also use this kind of language, which is like QAnon type of crap. And while I've actually called out many Freemasons and as well spoke about their symbols, their grips, handshakes, phrases, and that kind of a thing, and while I do largely detest the organization today in its form because of its involvement with politics, legal system, policing, and a lot of these people having literal total advantages over us in society because of the things they know, I am against it in its entirety. But you also have to bear in mind that, like, looking at Adolf Hitler, for instance, that some of the many groups that he persecuted, one of them were Freemasons, right? Another one, there were gays as well. There were various groups that he persecuted. But I'm just saying, you can't just, you know, torch a Masonic lodge or, you know, attack somebody because they are a Mason. Like, there has to be more substance than this by itself, and you can't just attack something by itself. There has to be something attached to it, right? Like Joe Schmo as a Freemason who's, you know, a construction worker that shakes hands to get whatever contract or whatever. I don't agree with that kind of nepotism. I don't agree with nepotism, really. I don't like that. But that's still a whole lot different than helping somebody get acquitted in a courtroom by doing a Masonic sign of distress, if you will. So, anyway, I want to talk about Joseph Nixon just a little bit here, and then I would like to talk about him further in the video and talk about some of the events that occurred beyond Kellyanne Wolf and her outburst, so to speak, or rather, outburst is not the good way to put it, but I'd say constructive interruption. So this is the public notice that was put into a Canadian Trucker magazine by David Mackenzie. I'll go to the cover after. But it says, all brothers and sisters from Turtle Island are hereby invited by the authority of the Great Spirit to the sovereign unceded territory of the hereditary Algonquin Nation to peacefully assemble and parley regarding a constitutional confederacy on or before December 21st, 2023. This invitation is granted under the International Flag of Peace, which they say a white square flag must be flown 18 by 18 inches. No rectangular corporate flags will be allowed during this peaceful event, so they say. And so some of the names that we see on here, I don't know who these three are: Grand Chief Buffalo Eagle, or Clan Mother White Bear of the Algonquin, or Clan Mother Bright Star of Six Nations. I have no idea who those people are, but I have met Chief Crazy Bear, Six Nations Mohawk. I have met Chief Little Wolverine, otherwise known as Joseph Nixon, who I had just shown, and who's of the Six Nations Iroquois Confederacy of Nations. And then this settler over here, this person signing on behalf of the settlers, is Gordon James Barry Jr. So, all in all here, I am really unsure as to what their plan is here. but it seems like they want to make this particular spot of southern Ontario, if you will, which goes just outside of North Bay, outside of Huntsville down there. And this is basically the boundaries of Ottawa, just a little bit outside of it, toward this place called Van Fleet Hill. This area they want to turn into sovereign, unceded territory. I'm not sure what that means, and I'm not sure how directly involved some of those particular faces, leaders, if you will, are involved, but we definitely see Joseph Nixon or Chief Little Wolverine, whatever his name is, his signature on here. I'm not sure how many of these people are actually native, for one thing. I know Gordon doesn't claim to be native, but I don't know how many of these people actually are. And the other aspect, too, that I don't know is with this, like, how do the faces of this event apply to this, and how do some of the other people apply to this thing in its entirety, right? So this magazine advertises stuff like Police on Guard for Thee and National Citizens Inquiry and stuff like that I've already called out. And then you have this guy from Port Hope as well on the front, which we'll speak about a little bit later, especially as we talk about Ron Clark. But this is the Canadian Trucking Magazine that you saw, that sovereign unceded territory plan, if you will. So, the next step here, sorry for getting lost a moment there, there's just lots to cover. The next thing I want to cover actually has to do with this event over here, that basically what happens is somebody comes up, this guy, I think his name is V or something like that, but this person and Jane Sharp basically interrupt a meeting that these convoy leaders or figurehead whatevers, they get interrupted, and these people are just shouting Trudeau for treason over and over again. And so what happens is V eventually gets into some kind of, I think it looks like a physical altercation, but he gets into this vehicle that seems to have like no front bumper on it or anything, and as well with no front bumper on it, what happens is two people basically climb on top of, one person is at the side and one person climbs on top of it, and what happens is they basically like one person pounds in the windshield, right? And you see the windshield is like totally scratched up to hell, right? And dented in. And that takes a lot of force, because a windshield is basically like a sheet of glass and then you have plastic in between and then another sheet of glass, something like that, right? Rick would know more the specifics, as he is a car guy from what I understand, Rick Walker of Maverick Multimedia. But that takes a lot of force to do that. In a car without a front bumper, let me just say that something like that is not even street legal, and I understand the difference between legal and lawful, but when it comes down to it, like, you know, how does somebody actually dent something like that unless there is, you know, a different type of sheet of glass that's actually slipped on? You know, if the car didn't even have a front bumper, for Christ's sakes, and what, they drove it from wherever, like, yeah, that's surely possible, but all in all, the reason why it seems like a stage to me, and the same with Kellyanne Wolf and Jody Ledgerwood at the meeting I was at, was with the one I was at, after Kellyanne Wolf went off, Jody Ledgerwood then went off as well and carried out for a little bit. And then this meeting as well was interrupted, but the antics were, like, how do I put it, far more detrimental, far more brutal, right? And so with that being the case, tensions are raised, and both groups stand for thee, which is shouting Trudeau for treason. Both groups stand for thee, and the convoy people actually benefit from this. And how do they both benefit from this? Is because each of their followers of each prospective group is going to be feeling each side is right or wrong or whatever. And so the air of tension and friction will always be there then. And this is again exactly what is intended. This purposeful division is what is intended by people. And so the thing is, a lot of the freedom movement, they hide behind that in and of itself, where when you actually bring up concerns and they basically accuse you of creating division, if you will. But the thing is, like, when it comes down to it, if you're supposed to be going up against these sinister people in some way, shape, or form, when I say sinister people, whether you're part of the Liberal Party and work for Justin Trudeau, or whether you're part of some kind of corporate oligarchy, or you're even within the freedom movement, it doesn't really matter. You know, the point is that you got to call things as it is, and so you're not being divisive and you're not creating division by calling people out or asking legitimate questions. If people can't answer them, well, you know, the thing is, it's your job to dealing with cancer, right? If you're truly what you call a freedom fighter, then you'd basically metaphorically be a surgeon in this case, where you'd be taking out the cancer, not allowing it to fester. So those are some of my thoughts there. Now, I'm going to go back very briefly to this Wolverine guy, because I just want to say, like, for one thing, he's mentioned in that Press Progress article where I mentioned the plan, but he was in contact with Rick Walker from Maverick Multimedia, and then as well, he was in contact with a friend of mine named Candace Hills, and he wanted to meet me when he was going down to Mississauga, basically. So I met him in a Tim Hortons prior to going to that meeting where Kellyanne Wolf and Jody Ledgerwood attended. So he and I met up, and he explained the plan of the locations being surrounded. He explained those phases of plans to me independently before I was at that meeting and heard it from his and Gordon's mouth. So he was always, or rather, I was always suspicious of him, but I didn't want to act on anything wrongly, and I also, as well, too, wanted to hear a little bit about what was going on. So while some things didn't add up, I just let the thoughts kind of build, so to speak. And so he and Gordon supposedly parted ways, and he supposedly withdrew his signature from the Trucker magazine, but that's, you know, all hearsay. So Joseph gave my friend Candace Hills a document that had to do with J.D. Anderson and smart cities, and there were other things included, such as letters to the Hague, to Buckingham Palace, and different things like that. And so, as well, he also said that the dogmen and dog soldiers were coming from the south to help the most powerful warriors. And then he told us about someone named Thomas Whitefeather and the last of the Cheyenne dogmen, and how Thomas had been to the European Union and spoke, saying, "The wrongs must be made right of my people, and that woman who lost status would be reinstated under the great law of peace." And he said that Whitefeather was gathering 5 sacred objects, that certain ceremonies needed to be done in order for first law under the great law of peace, which superseded all man-made laws and common law. So he had a story basically of a native woman warrior, of a flag, telling us it was the native woman warrior flag, which was basically the Mohawk flag, but instead of it being red, it was pink in the background. And it represented the Bear Clan and the 3 sisters who would reassert first law, great law of peace. And he mentioned getting in contact with somebody named Clan Mother Karen Ann McDonald. And as well, he mentioned, so here, let me just show a visual here. So Clan Mother Karen McDonald, he had wanted to apparently get in contact with. I don't know very much about her. And also White Buffalo Catwoman, and a third was to come forward, supposedly. So, also some of the things that really didn't add up. So, for one thing, I just want to say that these two articles, the reason why I include this Ottawa Citizen article and this CBC article here is that Jane Sharf has a history of interrupting meetings and that kind of a thing. And she, I think, also ran for mayor in Ottawa some time ago, about 10 or more years ago. And so, basically, what I was getting at with this little Wolverine guy is that with the document that he had sent me, I think me making a video about J.D. Anderson was, in hindsight, part of his plan because, how do I put it? These people want your focus to be very narrowed, and they don't care if you call out a small fry, so to speak, or one person involved in something, unless it be very major, right? There is always, how do I put it? There's always a way to cover up the bigger picture, is the way these people think. So if they have to sell out one of their own or something like that, they'll do so, no hesitation, no questions asked, right? And so with this, what happened is, one of the things that didn't make sense is around the time of the Million Man March, what happened was Joseph Nixon had said to Candace and I that it would be wise to stay away from Ottawa. And so staying away from Ottawa, basically, it's interesting because he advocates for us to do that, but then he has somebody named Supermama from the US, I don't know very much about her, come stay over at his place, and he lives in Ontario somewhere. And so he goes up with her, supposedly acting as a bodyguard, and he would wear a V for Vendetta mask, is what he said. And now he supposedly said that Sabrina Ayotte, who also goes by Dark Angel, who I believe to be aligned with JD, ended up wanting to speak to him and meet up with him. And so it was very strange that he was going down there, considering he had warned people to stay away. And strangely enough as well, he had asked me to interview Sabrina, as she apparently helped JD write letters to The Hague and Buckingham Palace. But the reason why I find this in particular very hard to believe is that JD is very, how do I say, he has an elegant vocabulary, and he's not only well spoken, excuse me, he's not only well spoken, but he is very educated. And so that's why I find it very hard to believe that he would actually need this Sabrina person to help him write letters of any sort. So the other thing too that really stuck out was that he had asked me to help him sell Save the Children Convoy stickers. And if he had stepped away from that entirely, which he had mentioned to Candace and I, why would he be asking to sell those stickers? And also, I had made it very clear that I'm not supporting something that I don't know a whole lot about. So I don't know why he would consistently ask me, but anyway, I tried to ask him about this in particular, and before I could ask him even any more sort of questions, he started yelling and swearing at me and ended up blocking me, and ended up telling me that his quote-unquote medicine woman stabbed him in the back, which he was referring to Candace Hill. And it's like, his medicine woman? Like, Candace isn't an object, you know what I mean? And so he was just a very possessive guy, is what I'm getting at. So the next thing I want to show, if the internet will actually not give me problems and my computer stops being slow, is I want to show the fact that Veterans for Freedom ended up basically doing like Veterans for Freedom basically ended up doing their own video that had to do with outing the plan, so to speak, of this convoy, if you will. And they also mentioned a few additional things, such as a highway blockade and a bridge being burned by natives. And apparently the person on voice here disagrees with that. But like, what I really don't understand, like, or rather what I just want to say straight up actually is, just because a plan has been revealed, it doesn't mean it is going to stop it, one. And two, how much of this plan that they told the public is actually true, and how much of the plan do we not actually know. And this whole notion of trust the plan, like, is really just boggles my mind, you know? And so some of the things I want to point out too, actually, rather, I don't want to point it out, but Rick Walker did very well. And it's that basically he ended up showing, like, he didn't end up showing ever so specifically, but he ended up catching subliminal imaging here, if you will, where, so on Awake Canada, they viewed an interview of Jesse Howe and Marcus Ray. Jesse Howe has his own show called The Missing Link. And so Jesse Howe has done many interviews, including interviewed myself. But anyway, at this point, he interviews Marcus Ray, and just literally like a year, right to the day, it was a year after that 5G zombie day psyop or whatever. But what happens is Marcus Ray at the time went talking about a plan that was virtually very similar, because he was still talking about saving the children and stuff too. He mentions that his force at the time consisted of ex-military, ex-police, and were larger in numbers than the truckers in Ottawa. And he said that they won't even stand a chance against them, and that this is a situation that's similar to a zombie movie where the soldiers stand no chance against the zombies no matter what weapons they have, and says that they're the zombies. And he says this is going to be a zombie apocalypse and we're the zombies. So the script is very interesting, to say the least, if that was scripted anyway. And also, too, again, just pointing out the fact that the plan was virtually the same, you know? And apparently, so Rick Walker, out of good faith, didn't actually show, but he did explain that basically when you have a flash frame or something just flashes in front of your eyes like that, it's kind of ingrained into your subconscious. And he gives the example of BMW and their advertisements. Basically, you know, it was unethical because the idea of a BMW is programmed into your mind. Now with this, he talks about a flash frame that has a noose that said "Hang loose, Justin Trudeau" on it, which is subliminal messaging. And so manipulating people in such a way is totally unethical. And while, again, I have zero support to a man like Justin Trudeau or his administration, or even Pierre Poilievre, or really any politician, privy council member, that kind of a thing. The reality is that any kind of revolution just leads to more bloodshed. And what we actually need is a revelation, as in a true change, right? And I'm not speaking biblically when I speak about any sort of revelation, right? I speak, when I mention the apocalypse, I mention the word apocalypse means unveiling or the revealing. And that's exactly what we need, and to come to a sense of peace. So, now I'm going to briefly speak about Colin Ross. I already mentioned a lot of these things in my video about him, so I'm not going to provide several links here, but I'll provide a link to the video that I had made about him. And while the Big Bear Movement website, I think, no longer exists, you can find it through Wayback Machine and verify what it is I'm saying. But basically, Colin Ross, in very indirect ways, was supporting the UN, such as through supporting the cause No More Stolen Sisters, which is supported by Amnesty International. And Amnesty International hold consultative status at the UN and support the UN Sustainable Development Goals, right? Just like the company We Make Impact, which is also one of the organizations he supported, and co-founder and Rotary Club member James Cohen is Colin Ross's friend, who also is mentioned in this article here, who attended and donated to the We Charity, right? Part of the same We Charity scandal that Justin Trudeau is a part of, interestingly enough. So, and with We Make Impact and that organization that he's a part of, they are on board with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So, what I'm getting at here is that with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, those are what, ultimately lead to our demise, and those kinds of people actually utilize just nice language like inclusiveness, which actually means exclusion, sustainable development, which has to do with the exact opposite of development, which is more akin to genocide. So, like, I'm just saying it's kind of funny to see the friends that Colin Ross keeps, and you can't. Some people say you can judge people by their company. You can't judge people by their company, but when they have these particular causes that they're supporting, and then their conduct as well goes to show, he also would sell masks as well, which is a part of his clothing line, right? And so a lot of these things are, you can't look past them. Like, we can say somebody had made a mistake or whatever, but support for the United Nations, like, Colin Ross knows exactly what it is he is doing, right? And same exactly with Ron Clark, who I'm going to be talking about. But first, I just want to leave this little link in the video here just to show you. This is Colin Ross. He says, "We are all under the same creator, one world, one humanity united." That sounds like the lovely vanilla way of saying New World Order, maybe one world religion, one world whatever. And so, yeah, Colin Ross is no saint, that's for sure. But again, you can watch my video for that one. So with Ron Clark, what I want to say is, you have this video out here, and the person who outed him is, interestingly enough, Jason LaFauci, who I've mentioned has ties to Anonymous and the Soldiers of Odin. So while I don't trust himself on a personal level, it doesn't mean what he's sharing is untrue. Like I said, sometimes within these little disputes, if you will, whether staged or not, there are ounces of truth that come out of them. And so with this one here, what you have is Jason LaFauci actually brings up the fact that at Camp Hope, which has Norman Hebert, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but Norman Hebert is this guy right in the center of the magazine over here. He runs Camp Hope, and basically what happens is Jason LaFauci talks about the fact that Ron Clark and others were warned, such as Colin Ross and such, in regards to this particular man attending in a teddy bear costume who has this particular charge over here attending Camp Hope. This is back in February of the February Unity Convoy. So that was an interesting event for sure. And so you can see that basically Ron Clark was warned, right, had message sent to him, and as well in their Telegram page, people were warned about this particular person, Herbert Norman Price, attending. But they actually did nothing about it and were basically saying crap like we can't be exclusive and that sort of a thing. We have to include everybody. And the owner of Camp Hope is literally no different. So, and the other thing too, I just want to say is that, like, I'm gonna pretty well conclude this one, but these are the events that are upcoming here, which is Saturday, October 14th, and and it lasts until Monday, October 16th, where they'll be in Parliament Hill. These are all the destinations and such. So, to be straight with everybody, this is the Illuminati card game, and there's a lot of predictive programming in it, such as with 9/11, for instance. And so what I'm getting at is you want to prevent a future that has to do with smart cities, 15-minute cities, Internet of Things, that kind of a thing, right? Which we see here with this card, Blinded by Science. You want to prevent a future that looks like that. You also want to prevent a future that has to do with, we'll say, political correctness, for lack of better words, right? People shouldn't be censored, right? But it also seems like, when I approach somebody for a conversation, right, that apparently they're way too busy to get back to me or something of the sort. And I understand, Gordon, that, you are very busy, but it doesn't take a whole lot of effort to forward that to people. And if you want to be open and transparent, it was honestly, I think, a better idea to do a live stream than it was for me to attend or do anything of the sort, because of all the various things that I wanted to bring up here. I wouldn't want to take up all of everybody's time at a meeting. Rather, it would be advantageous for you to speak publicly. And so I do think that there are things you have to answer for, such as the constitutional sheriff's shirt, or if anything having to do with constitutional sheriffs or Marcus Ray still applies. Because while you're saying I believe that Marcus Ray isn't involved in this, if I am mistaken on that, please correct me. The constitutional sheriff's shirt makes me beg to differ. And even so, whether he is or not, Marcus Ray is just one man, right? And I am skeptical about what actually is planned here. So you have as well the trucker convoy as part of the Illuminati card game, part of the predictive programming. And while this doesn't actually just refer to the Ottawa truck convoy that people know, or even United We Roll 2019, but you can see this says long haul on it. So we're in it for the long haul, right? It's about a movement. It's not about an event. This card, I mean. So what I'm getting at here is, with every economic turnover in history, there's always a war. And in order to bring about CBDCs or any sort of social credit system or digital ID, or even for Nasara Jasara, whatever, your silly non-gold backed, silver backed assets, whatever, your lie, they would need a spark to start the fire. And all that's needed really is an overwhelming force that police couldn't contain. And this overwhelming force doesn't have to be with everybody that is on the side of the truck convoy, but really just a large portion of people that are at odds with something either having to do with the system or something that is of heavy tension or notable controversy. So Israel, Palestine, for instance, that kind of a thing, right? And Canada does have a large portion of immigrants too, so there are all kinds of issues too, especially with Ukraine, Russia, and then you have the, so to speak, National Socialist in Parliament, right? Which is, like, how do I put it? It takes more than an idiot to allow that to happen. Like, you have to specifically, you can't have that many incompetent people working in Parliament one day, right? And basically what I'm saying is you have to allow that to happen, is my point. With all these events converging on each other, it doesn't really matter. You have an overwhelming force that are at odds. You have overwhelming forces that are all at odds with each other, because every narrative needs a counter narrative, and every counter narrative needs a counter narrative, so to speak, right? So what I'm saying is when it appears like a choice is offered in front of you, like Israel-Palestine, for instance, it's my understanding that Benjamin Netanyahu also funded Hamas. So that kind of really, you have him playing both sides of the event, and you'll see this happen quite often, right? Like Canada, even we helped fight with the communists during World War II, but after World War II, and the UN is built, by the way, but after World War II, you fast forward to like 2015, roughly 2014 maybe, then you have Operation Unifier, where the Canadian soldiers actually helped train the Azov neo-Nazi militia, so in Ukraine. So while it might seem like we're offered a choice, the thing is the choices we're being offered, red or blue pill or whatever it is, are offered by, we'll say, Morpheus, for lack of better words, and Morpheus is the Greek god of sleep, so whatever choice you make, you sleep, is my point. So all I'm getting at is think for yourself. Don't be afraid to ask questions. No matter what form it is, someone will try to silence you. No matter what it is, we all need to have a voice, and we all need to contribute in some way, shape, or form. And while I actually don't have a solution to offer, I am more than open to hearing people's ideas to solutions and moving forward. So once again, I want to thank everybody for watching, like, subscribe, and if you have any questions, please forward them to me, whether you want to find me on Facebook under Matt Unseated or YouTube Matt the Unseated. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. Take care.